So you're very welcome along. People around here think I'm a coffee snob because I bring my own little coffee percolator, as it's been called erroneously, to studio and to work. But on Mondays in particular, the coffee machine doesn't work because it's been absolutely destroyed over the weekend by the weekend folks, of whom I used to be one. And in the immortal words of Roy Keane, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, right?
Yeah, well, I'm sipping on a delicious coffee fresh from our fully efficient coffee machine outside here. So it is working this morning.
Fixed it. Okay.
It's the first time I've ever seen it working on Monday morning.
Because I did hear somebody else earlier on say it wasn't working. But the reason I bring that up is because Roy Keane was once the RTÉ Sports Personality of the Year, once in his illustrious career in 1999.
Once is enough. Mo Farah's only won it once.
What? It doesn't make any sense. Roy Keane only won it once. He was the best footballer at the most successful club in English football at their most successful time.
I think if you've learned anything from 2017, it is that these awards place a very high importance on creating a moment. So Roy Keane just had too much greatness over a long period of time. He never went above that greatness to do something even greater than the great player that he already was, which is what he needed to do.
What orgy of greatness are you trying to convince us didn't exist in his life?
I'm saying Roy Keane was too consistently amazing for him to win any of these awards.
Good solid 8 out of 10 all the time.
Exactly, too good. Whereas James McClean, we were all like, well, James McClean is playing above and beyond for his country this season. Look how crap he is for West Brom. Look how amazing he is for Ireland. Therefore, he is one of Ireland's greatest sports people. We tend to really enjoy that stuff, particularly when it comes down to a public vote.
Padraig Harrington won it 3 times. He won it in 2002 for being a member of the European Ryder Cup team.
Well, there was different standards back then.
Back then, like it was, go on.
It was 15 years ago. I mean, the whole...
That's all. Go on.
But like, doesn't the golfing landscape in this country change in 2007? Suddenly we're like, wait a minute, we've got a major winner. Now we've got to be setting our ambitions much, much higher. And that's what I presume 07 and 08 are the other 2 years that Harrington wins the award, yeah?
A lot of golfers win this. Yeah, he won it. GMAC has won it. So Harrington's won it 3 times. GMAC has won it. Rory McIlroy has won it twice. McIlroy might be the only other 2-time winner that I can see there, apart from Sonia's won it 4 times. And then Eamon Darcy, Ronan Rafferty and Des Smith won it collectively as a trio back in the dark days when winning the Dunhill Cup in 1988. We had a team in the Euros. What the hell is wrong with these people?
Yeah, the fact that Ray Houghton doesn't win in 1988 is a complete shambles, to be quite honest. So
Christy O'Connor Jr. won it the next year. I suspect that a golfer was picking it before it became a public vote.
What year did Roy Keane win it?
99.
That's fair enough. But he
should have won it about 6 times. He should have won in 94. Sonia won it then. Gold medalist in the European Championships.
Fair enough.
It's the European Championships, and he was our best player in a World Cup.
Yeah.
We reached the 2nd round.
Yeah, but like this comes down to the whole Ruby Walsh discussion again, doesn't it? The whole winning versus achievement, and does that actually level up with a gold medal?
But we all know that was an idiotic argument, because football is the most popular sport in the world, played by everybody in every country.
Yeah, but it's not,
and you reach the World Cup last 16 and you're the best player in the team. That's probably more important than, you know.
It's not the exact Ruby Walsh argument. Ruby Walsh was making the argument for rugby, which is played by whatever, a fraction of the globe. I think a lot more countries take part in athletics. Of course, it was only Europeans, but...
Brian O'Driscoll's won it once, and that is it in terms of rugby players. So, rugby not very popular.
Yeah. 01, who wins in 01?
In 2001, I'll tell you now, it is Mick McCarthy.
Right.
Big
Very
Mick.
Interesting. I think what happened there is they couldn't decide between McAteer and they couldn't decide between Roy Keane.
But McAteer wasn't the sports personality of the year. He scored a goal, a really important goal.
Yeah.
At the end of like one of the greatest individual performances by Roy Keane.
Yeah. Well, like there's a huge waiting on the moments that somebody creates.
5 months after another amazing performance in the Portugal game.
Yeah, I heard that when it comes to the calendar year, particularly when it comes to the BBC Awards, is that August is the most important month to perform because the majority of winners come from August. Yeah, it's a sweet spot. Mo Farah obviously did his thing in August this year.
Okay, we'll have more on this a little bit later on. If you want to get involved in the conversation, then pester us on Twitter, twitter.com/offtheball. You can subscribe there and make sure you turn on notifications, and anytime the show goes live in future, we'll let you know about that as well. Or you can leave comments on YouTube or Facebook as well. Coming up, we're going to talk about Moorefield, an absolutely sensational comeback from them. I'm going to be asking you for your favourite comeback stories as well. Monday's back pages, we have the Champions Cup, a brilliant weekend for the Irish teams. Andy Dunn is going to join us in studio about that one. Oisin Langan's going to talk to us about Moorefield and also about the GAA Sleepout over the course of the weekend, which seems to have captured a lot of people's imagination. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about what hopefully the legacy of that is going to be. Chris Froome finished, where did he finish? 5th or 6th, 4th in the voting for BBC Sports Personality of the Year. Douvan is out for the year as well. We'll get some analysis and reaction from John Duggan live in a couple of minutes' time. Martin Lipton, who... Is it a secret that he's a Spurs fan? It isn't, because he's literally written the book on Spurs and White Hart Lane. Yeah,
he certainly would weight more towards them than Manchester City, that's for sure.
I think he's a Spurs fan, yeah. So it's not a secret anymore if it was. He's going to talk to us about Man City wrapping up the title. We're going to say they wrapped up the title after the game.
Yeah, they wrapped up the title last Sunday, they wrapped it up against Swansea midweek, and they managed to wrap it up for a third time in 1 week against Manchester City on Saturday night, which was incredible, really.
Yeah.
Every goal they score now is the goal that sealed the title.
Loads of horse racing people have won, and loads of boxers. So Michael Conlan has won, and Katie Taylor has won. Tony McCoy has won.
You said it like you're surprised, as if boxing and horse racing aren't.
Won. Sorry, Ronan Sweeney won in 2004 when we did the Triple Crown.
But like, if you talk about our overachievements on an international stage, boxing and horse racing are two of our best sports, if not our two best sports. So,
but it's National Hunt, where it's us and a few farms in England. And that's it.
Yeah, but it is still the kind of pure dominance of it. So I'm not sure what year McCoy won it, but like it is the dominance at Cheltenham, particularly in the last decade. I'm not sure does McCoy come into that window. I'm sure he does. But it's not just we did very well against our English counterparts. It's like we crushed them. That's the key part of this.
But we don't actually crush them.
Well, we have done it a couple of times in the last 10 years.
Yeah, a couple of times. But like, and that's a bunch of people who are doing the crushing, and also massive state subvention to the tune of €1 billion over the last 15 years. So it's like we've decided that we're going to spend €1 billion on horse racing, and at the end of it we win a few races at Cheltenham. Happy days, and maybe somebody wins a little trinket at the end of it.
You're downplaying our international racing exploits, which I can see where you're coming from.
Racing is no more a massive international. National Hunt is no more a massive international thing than if you're saying rugby isn't. You can't have National Hunt and not have rugby.
Like I'm actually sick of this argument of which is more important on an international scale. X and Y don't play that sport. It's not very big in North Africa, therefore it can't be big to us. We can't feel proud about achieving.
Do you think James McClean was the Irish sports personality of the year? Is it sports personality?
Either way, no, I would have given it to Joe Canning, but I can see how James McClean ends up winning it, for sure.
Are you sure it's sports personality, Tommy? Because the Wikipedia says RT, and Wikipedia is never wrong, as we know. It says RT Sports Person of the Year.
Well, either way, I'm not surprised James McClean won it. Like, I don't think he should have won it, but think about the moment that you were the most happy while watching a sporting moment this year. Beating Wales is probably up there. And I know it shouldn't be about the sports moment, but inevitably these things come down to a moment that happened in the year, and certainly James McClean's
Here's
goal.
our poll. James McClean claimed Sports Person of the Year. Do you think he was a worthy winner? Who would you vote for? So Rena Buckley finished 4th on the list. James McClean finished 3rd. Joe Canning was 2nd, and that other he/she had an amazing year.
Yeah, I think Joe Canning was a deserving winner, to be quite honest, because of the 12 months that it encapsulates. That is what the award should be for. But ultimately, people are voting with that's James McClean. He made me really happy that one evening when I was watching sport this year, and he sums up what I will remember from 2017. In my opinion, I won't remember 2017 for James McClean's goal at all, because it led to essentially nothing. We didn't qualify for the World Cup in the end.
That's a bit of an issue, isn't it? It's like if we qualify for the World Cup and you want to give it to somebody involved in us qualifying for the World Cup, then that's fine. You pick somebody to exemplify that.
Which would have been Shane Duffy.
Perhaps. Or, it doesn't matter. It could have been Martin O'Neill if we qualified. If we'd drawn 0-0 and gone through on penalties and Darren Randolph saves 3 penalties, then maybe Darren Randolph gets it. And I don't think anybody has any problems with that. But we got absolutely annihilated. We got spanked. I realise a lot of people left early and maybe they forgot, but we got absolutely annihilated by Denmark. So this is where I might have a little bit of sympathy with the we don't just tolerate but we celebrate mediocrity argument that Ruby Walsh has put forward. It's okay. I mean, James McClean has had a really good year in terms of being a decent human being, standing up in the face of the very annoyed poppy ranters.
I think that counts for something, for sure. I think that's important, especially if it is indeed the sports personality of the year, then that's definitely important. But even in just a general sporting person sense, it is quite important that that is celebrated and that is rewarded, that, you know what, athletes, it's okay to speak out about certain things. It's okay to not just stick to sports. And I think that should definitely be promoted. And like, as I say, I can completely see why James McClean wins this. I just don't think he deserved it.
Can you see why Mo Farah won his? Why Mo Farah is now the most popular English/British sports person in a year when Anthony Joshua has literally single-handedly saved the heavyweight division?
And I can't believe the disparity between them. I'm not surprised that Mo Farah beat Anthony Joshua. I would have thought Joshua definitely gets on the podium in the BBC Sports Personality of the Year, but it just didn't happen. In essence, BBC's job has worked.
5, 6, 7. Chris Froome was 7th. Lewis Hamilton clearly knew that he wasn't going to win because it is a popularity contest and everybody, for whatever reason, hates him in England. He finished 6th. I don't really know who Adam Peaty or Johnny Peacock I see a lot of people saying that it's a Northern Ireland motorcyclist is Jonathan Ray, but...
Yeah, well, Peaty and his exploits in the swimming pool are arguably just as good as anything there in the top 5, potentially outside of Farah.
What did he do?
He set a world record in Rio. So what did he do in 2017 is what you're asking, obviously, which is a very, very good question because I definitely follow swimming outside of the Olympics, but I know he was a record breaker in Rio for sure. They did that amazing CGI lion video for him last night. It's like, this is England's true lion. It was a way of segueing him into the stage at the same time as Harry Kane.
Right.
And basically there was a lion following Adam Peaty around the swimming pool, and then the lion would roar and Peaty would jump into the swimming pool. If you didn't feel patriotic about that, even as an Irishman, then you've got no heart at all, is what I say.
you felt patriotic towards Britain.
Yeah, a little bit. I was like, I felt very un-nationalistic about the whole thing. But in terms of Mo Farah, like, the whole thing has worked. The BBC coverage of the World Championships has worked an absolute treat. People believed what they said. Like, when we come back to this discussion about the BBC fulfilling this role of informing the public about the people that Mo Farah associates with, and the lack of mentioning this when Mo Farah was winning those medals in the World Championships, this is the product of that problem, that you're not informing the public who Mo Farah is dealing with, and suddenly the public are like, there's nothing wrong with this guy. There is no reason why I shouldn't be picking up the phone and voting for Mo Farah tonight.
It is the logical extension of the coverage, you're right, in fairness. If you just watch the BBC, you would think that what he has done is absolutely amazing. He is literally their most successful Olympian in the same way that Michelle Smith is Ireland's most successful Olympian. And if that's all you ever look for, then you've got to vote for these people when these award ceremonies come around. And actually, maybe these award ceremonies are useful in reminding us that a lot of coverage around this stuff is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, but ultimately, you can't really blame anybody for having a BBC-only view on things because their coverage looks amazing, it is comprehensive, and you just kind of feel that the analysis will then come with that. But that wasn't obviously the case with the athletics until you get to Justin Gatlin, of course, when their coverage turned on its head. You look at Chris Froome then last night, and he takes a web call. And I'm sure...
Did he, yeah?
Yeah, in fairness to the BBC, there's no way that Froome is taking that call unless they pre-agreed what's going to be asked and that there's going to be no follow-up. So Claire Balding...
How's the asthma? Hey!
So there was an adverse finding last week. What's your reaction to this? Was the question, as far as I can recall. Chris Froome gives his spiel, and then Balding's follow-up is, so what's next for you, Chris Froome? Which was kind of a nice, easy out. But as I say, in fairness to the BBC... there's no way Froome is doing that piece unless his people are telling Claire that this is what you're asking, or otherwise he's not doing the piece.
Don't do it. Don't have the piece. We're not having him on tonight because you might have noticed it's more than likely fact now that he's going to get stripped of the Vuelta.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he did this year that gets him into this is that he won the Vuelta after winning the Tour. And we've decided, as an organisation, we don't stand for this type of thing. Kind of.
Well, like, I've been thinking about that, and that is definitely the right thing to do. But the more I think about it, this is an organisation, the Sports Personality of the Year, that is, it's over 60 years old. It is an institution in itself. And when they see Chris Froome's story come out last week, I think they feel that as a slight on themselves, that one of their own nominees has been tainted with this story that came out last week, and they feel the sort of protectionism over Chris Froome. And they were like, no, we're going to stand by our man. He is a nominee for BBC Sports Personality of the Year. We've been around for over 60 years. We're older than most of the people in this country. How very dare you touch this institution? So I feel that's their attitude towards Froome. And it certainly kind of was shown last night.
All right, loads of comments coming through. Daniel O'Brien says, you guys probably think Roy Keane should have won it in 2002. Well, I mean, back in 2002, I probably thought he should have won it. But, you know, we all move on. We've all learned. Conor O'Callaghan says, Francis Bellew and I'm a Meath man. A lot of people saying that we don't really fully understand or appreciate exactly what Conor O'Callaghan did this year, that it is a miraculous thing, that 10 trophies, that it's a level of expertise in both sports that you're never really going to see again, more than likely, and that needs to be marked somehow. Ryan Burnett, says Paul Sullivan, there's a really strong case that Ryan Burnett's achievements this year were at that level, certainly as somebody who has that backstory and who has provided and stuff. But I think boxing really always suffers these days because most people don't get to see the fights. That's the whole terrestrial TV nugget again. Colin O'Sullivan says the Cork voters are out in force this morning. Where were the Cork voters? I mean, Cork had like many people who could have been Sportsperson of the Year. Anna Donovan, maybe Dominic Casey. Actually, there's a case for him being Sportsperson of the Year, given that all of our rowing success is down to his club. Kevin Kane says it's embarrassing that James McClean won it. I'm a season ticket holder. All the lad has is passion and got a couple of goals. I think it was 1 goal, wasn't it, in the calendar year? He has no skill, can't cross and gives the ball away too much. Katie Taylor or Joe Canning for me. Yeah, again, I wonder, does Katie Taylor suffer from the fact that the fights aren't on TV? Because last week, reports of her fight were the most read on a lot of the websites, and certainly there's a lot of residual interest in Katie Taylor and what she's doing. But again, those fights just need to be seen by a wider audience before she starts to get the credit for her professional career that she got for her amateur career. Yeah, she got a mention on the BBC version last night as well, which was pleasantly surprising. Herself, McGregor and the Republic of Ireland football team were the 3 Ireland mentions as far as I can remember. Yeah. No mention of McGregor this year for whatever reason. I don't know why. What could you possibly exclude him for? I mean, he made 100 million, right? That's the whole point of getting involved in sport, to make money. The second greatest event in fight history. Disgraceful decision that Dublin didn't win. We didn't talk about the team of the year, actually. I don't care about the individual award, really. James McClean wins it, happy, whatever. But the show jumpers. What the hell? Okay, we didn't see this one coming. McClean kind of a little bit, it's like, oh, that's a tad surprising. The show jumpers was just like, what the hell, what just happened there? You're suddenly reading back through the papers that you've kept for months and months, and you're like, well, what did these people do in July? What happened to the Aga Khan? Did they win the Aga Khan? That's a very good question, which I actually... I remember the open top parade after they won. They didn't win the Aga Khan. They did have an open top parade. There was one of those. So that automatically leads to Team of the Year, doesn't it? Although Dublin had an open top parade as well. It does seem weird that the Dubs didn't win this. Like, that doesn't really make any sense. Is every aspect of it 100% public vote, or is it a mix between the public and also the... We can look that up. We can look that up first, but we'll get that a little bit later on. But let's get you through the newspapers, and you can give us your continued abhorrence of show jumping and the anti-Dublin bias that clearly exists within the media now that the Dubs haven't won any awards. Not a single award. I mean... Well, Philly McMahon. Yeah. Yeah, Philly. I mean, that's really Niall Kelly. But he was also a Dub. All right. The newspapers, we are going to start this morning with the Examiner. Edging clear, 17-point Keatley propels Munster to crucial Welford Road win. It looked like he was channeling his inner Ronan O'Gara at various stages, just punching the ball barely a foot off the ground. It would bobble into touch, and suddenly you could see the slightly weary shuffle of the Leicester lads back. Yeah, especially after those first 2 early knock-ons, the way he managed to compose himself late on in the game was absolutely outstanding. I think we're going to move on to the Irish Times there, Ger, which is right beside you. I think they're going with Munster and Leicester as well. They've got a picture of CJ, of course, the try scorer in that one. So Munster stay cool in the furnace to forge a second Irish sweep. United still chasing hard, but second spot looks the best on offer. And Douvan ruled out for the rest of the season. This is the news that Rich Ritchie has taken the decision to stand down Douvan for the rest of this season, so he won't be in Cheltenham this year. Another rugby lead on the back of the Irish Independent. Another green sweep. Reads the headline with a picture of Peter O'Mahony there with his fist clenched. Tony Ward, if the last 2 weekends have proved one thing, it is that we are back in the race with the cash-rich top 14 and Premiership elite. So a great weekend for the Irish provinces. We're going to be discussing it with Andy Dunn in just a few minutes. The Daily Mail today, 4 roll on. Munster cap a great weekend for the provinces. And Moorefield refused to lie down. This is Moorefield 6 points down with 6 minutes to go, and 6 minutes into stoppage time. Satanic victory there. Win by a point. Let's show you the back page of the Times Ireland edition. They are leading with City. We want Guardiola for the long haul. They're prepared to offer him a long-term contract at the end of this season. Rogers says the unbeaten run was remarkable. That, of course, ended after 69 games yesterday with that hammering against Hearts. And there is Simon Zebo, a tiger tamer is what they call him. We won't quit. Jose Mourinho bullish as City look to create new Guardiola dynasty. So this is the news that Man City are trying to give Guardiola a 10-year contract or some kind of sense of stick with us for a bit longer and don't get burnt out. Mourinho saying that no matter that the season is effectively over for Manchester United, they won't quit. What else is he going to say?
On Merry Christmas, reads the back of the Mirror. Grumpy Jose and says he has given up celebrating even when United win after a wobble. So in light of events in Manchester last week when they were playing Oasis too loud in the Manchester City dressing room, Jose has done something very uncharacteristic and gone into a sulk, and he will no longer celebrate any victory. So that is breaking news we can bring you this morning.
We're going to talk with Martin Lipton a little bit later on about the Spurs situation. Might bring this up with him. Dele is another star falling short of the hype. This is Alan Shearer saying that Dele Alli not living up to the hype around him. And then park the parade bus. This is Mourinho saying stop celebrating, you've won nothing yet, even though they've really won the league.
On the back of the Irish Daily Star goes Hearts stoppers. Celtic's unbeaten run is blown apart. You've also got a 200-to-1 shot to history makers there on the back page. City planning a Pep dynasty, and Jose is defiant in the wake of Manchester United's 2-1 win away to West Brom yesterday.
The Irish News obviously leading with that Celtic story as well on their back page. 69 and out as Hearts halt hoops. Rodgers hails boys for historic winning run. They also talk about the Moorefield game, and Ergal Kieran won with one of the Canavan starring. That was the women's football team from Ergal, and not surprising that when there's an Ergal Kieran team that it's a Canavan who's starring.
On the front page of the Racing Post, they're leading with that big story this morning that Douvan is set to miss the rest of the season. Tony O'Hare with the story there. While on the back of it, it says playing it safe. That's to do with Everton versus Swansea, which is tonight's Premier League game. Yeah,
Yannick Bolasie possibly on the bench for Everton in tonight's game. And The Guardian and Telegraph, final two here. Tuilagi, one of the few positives as English clubs struggle in Europe. Yeah, Manu Tuilagi, decent. Talk about that with Andy Dunn in a couple of minutes' time. In terms of the Six Nations, it looks like he might be back in the reckoning for that one. And then that's that story about Manchester City wanting to give Guardiola a new long-term deal, that they will talk about a contract sooner rather than later with Pep.
And we'll finish off with the Telegraph, who are leading with cricket, I believe, this morning. Yeah. Indeed, they are just too good. Stark's ball of the century and batting errors leave England on the brink of series defeat. The Ashes all but over now at this point.
Mo Farah was 50-1. That was the other story there from the Telegraph, and didn't expect to win, so didn't actually show up to the event last night. So
he was at the Mo Farah Academy. I know it was in Liverpool now. The Mo Farah Academy, I believe, is in London, so bit of a trek, but you're in the same country, mate. Like Lewis Hamilton, in fairness, was in LA, so they had to get him on video link.
Yeah.
And even
on a private jet from LA to Liverpool is as difficult as it is for Mo on public transport, even though he's Sir Mo.
Hamilton didn't find Gary Lineker's jokes that funny, and the only reason that was, I fully put it down to this, was just the delay on the line. Otherwise, I presume Hamilton has a beautiful sense of humour and would laugh at anything. But just last night, he just wasn't on form.
All right, let's go to GAA briefly. It's the other big story of the weekend. It's Moorefield's victory over St Lomans, a miraculous comeback against St Lomans to win their second Leinster title. Here is stalwart, legend and veteran Ronan Sweeney in conversation with Oisin Langan.
Ronan Sweeney, congratulations on a second Leinster club title of your career. Was the plan to be 3 points up at half time, but then I think 7 down with 7 to go?
Oh, of course, yeah, that was the plan. No, look, we never do anything the easy way. I thought we were comfortable enough by the end of the first half. I thought we were really kind of getting control of the game and putting huge pressure on their kickouts, but they came out strong at the start of the second half, you know, even just winning the throw-in, scoring straight away, and within no time at all they were back level. And I thought we panicked a small bit, and they made it very difficult for us. They're a really good team, and I feel for them the way that game went. You know, it happened to us before, so it's devastating for them, but I'm sure they'll be back again.
How did you make your way back into that game, because it looked dead and buried?
Yeah, well, when the second goal went in, I thought, Jesus, no, I didn't think we were dead and buried, but I thought we're nearly buried. One more, we were, you know, I thought it was going to take something really, really special to bring us back into this game. And luckily enough, James Murray's interception there as they were coming out was the first time that we opened them up a little bit. They kind of committed numbers to the break, so that was the first goal opportunity we got. And I thought when we got that, then I knew that we had the wherewithal and we just the know-how to come back into this game and put real pressure on them. And then when they had a man sent off, we put serious pressure on their kick out. And the rest is history.
Is this your greatest achievement in football? I know it's very raw and emotional now and it might be hard to judge, but I'd say it's not far off it.
No, it's not. I mean, like, it's unbelievable. Like I was just saying earlier on there, I genuinely believe this is the best competition in the GAA. I think the club championship, the Leinster Club Championship or the Provincial Club Championship is by far the best competition that you can play in. It's just a different feel to it compared to any other game, whether it's inter-county or even your club championship at home. There's an incredible kind of sense of togetherness when you're after winning a club championship or county championship, and you're on a kind of a journey. And just to end here now today again in Portlaoise with a cup the same as all six is incredible, and we can't wait for the build up to the All-Ireland series now. We're really going to give it a good rattle and see how we can get on. I know we're playing against a monster in Corofin, but you know, we can't wait for it.
You told me after the Rathnew game that Moorefield was special. There was a bond. You were like a family. Family is massively important. I saw you on the phone to your dad there just after the full-time whistle. That must have been a special moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he couldn't make it today, Dad. You know, he's not 100% at the moment. But my mum was here and all my sisters, like they are every game. My son and my wife and kids, and Dad is, you know, crying on the phone at home on the other end and bawling his eyes. I could hardly understand him. So he, for a minute he didn't know we won it. He thought we had drawn the game. So it was extra special. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to going home and calling around to the house now, and maybe I'll grab the cup and bring it up to him for a few minutes. And
finally from me, did that last 7-8 minutes, did that kind of define what Moorefield is? Is that the definition of what you were saying after the Rathnew game to me, that Moorefield is there's something special about this group, about this club? I think so, yeah. And I think anyone in Kildare, you know, there's probably lots of other clubs in Kildare that don't, you know, particularly like us, but I think they respect us because they know that, you know, we're an honest team, and you know, sometimes we don't do everything 100% correct, but geez, we don't give up. We believe in ourselves. We fight like hell for each other. And we'll never give up, and there's a fair bit of talent there too, you know. There was some really good scores there today, and you know, I think there's something special, extra special this year has been brought by the management team as well. Like I have to say, like Ross and Kevin and Frank have brought just that extra something that has brought us to this place here today. Yeah, a bit of Kerry magic there as well with Jack and obviously Eanna and the brother. Bit of Kerry magic as well, yeah, because their influence has been huge, you know, over the last 3 or 4 years. Jack is more of an influence this year as well, which, you know, but and it just fits perfectly well, you know. I see Eanna up there collecting the cup with the Kerry hat on him. He's not going to forget where he's from anyway, that's for sure. But yeah, no, they're huge in the club, and it's great to have Keane back now for the All-Ireland semi-final, because he was a big missing link in the chain today. Rocky, well done. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Yeah, congratulations to everybody at Moorefield there, Leinster champions after an amazing comeback victory. Now Andy Dunn is here to talk to us about the weekend's rugby. How you doing?
I'm good, Chair.
An amazing weekend. It's supposed to be the weekend where the English clubs roar back, and screw them, they didn't.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. The double treble, as it was described. So, yeah, it certainly represents a change in or shift in momentum relative to the last couple of years in the European game.
I mean, I'm not normally very nationalistic about this kind of stuff, but they screwed up this entire competition so it would serve the English clubs a little bit better. They fixed it so that they could get their best players in and out, and kind of the whole Premiership season was now supposed to tend towards allowing the English clubs to compete, and, you know, screw you.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. Like, I didn't, like, until they were like completely, we want to ruin this tournament and own us.
Yeah, it's kind of a victory for the small man as well in terms of budgets. And the Irish teams are clearly battling against financial power with the English and the French, obviously. But to see a scenario, for example, like Kevin O'Byrne starting for Munster with Reece Marshall behind him, Niall Scannell. They've also Mike Sherry, Duncan Casey. Like, you have 5 homegrown Irish players, well, apart from Reece Marshall there, but 5 hookers, 4 homegrown. It's a testament to what the Irish academies are doing and development of young players and the fight against the big financial giants. Yeah,
let's talk a little bit about that.
Excuse me.
That Munster performance. We were talking a bit earlier on, there was a couple of early knock-ons from Keatley, and still at this stage people are thinking, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen here. But after that he was sensational. There was just like, there were a lot of those kicks where you're thinking, that doesn't look beautiful, but it's actually exactly what he was trying to do. It was like he's got the full consciousness now of what that role requires in a match like that.
Yeah, he's developed so much in terms of I know Matt O'Connor spoke afterwards about Munster returning to what is their DNA and that Munster grit and the true sense of what their culture is about. And to have a 10 who can play in the mould of O'Gara, which they haven't had since Ronan's departure. I think with the various challenges Ian has faced, he's just shown a level of resilience which is very, very admirable. And to see him kind of turn the screw in a game in terms of, you know, putting pressure on a side like Leicester, you know, he did it with great authority. It's something that he's probably struggled with over the last few years, but I think with time on the field, with gaining experience from you know, under duress at times, he's really kind of developed that side of his game.
I think you watch Ian Keatley in a different way now. Previously, you're like, even if the team that they're up against are ill-disciplined, Keatley might not put them away. But now suddenly teams are going to come to Thomond and they're like, we have to be so tight in our discipline, otherwise this guy's going to kill us. He's turned into this unbelievably reliable place kicker, which I don't think we've seen from Keatley in his entire career. I think this is probably the best he's been off the tee ever.
Well, I think there are, you know, he is one of the highest scorers in the history of the Pro 12.
Sure, yeah.
So he's obviously been consistent enough. I think where it's been difficult for him is that he's missed one or two high-profile pressure kicks that's kind of stuck with him for a long period of time. But over the course of the last 10 seasons, his kicking percentage is pretty strong. So, you know, I originally lost my place to him in Connacht. I was at the tail end of my career, and he was brought in at that stage because he was a more reliable kicker. So, you know, even from the early outset of his career, he was very competent in that position. But the higher profile games, European games, it was probably used as a stick to beat him with for a period of time. But you know, if you actually look at it dispassionately away from those one or two big kicks, he's been quite consistent.
It's the decision making as well. But I guess, and it leads us into that kind of conversation about really how Irish rugby is run in future. Like, he is the prototype of a late bloomer in many ways. Clearly good enough to be in the academy system, not quite good enough to make it at Leinster, goes to Connacht, does really well, and then it always looked like he was destined to be a backup at Munster, even to the point where they go and they source Tyler Blendall. Now, injuries and whatever mean that he gets his chance, and he gets a chance again after it looks like Blendall has taken his place. And maybe we're just too quick in all sports, really, to write people off. He's now better than he's ever been.
Yeah. Well, it's just part of the journey in sport. You know, I didn't think into my own career, 10 years worth of playing, it was rarely the most talented guy who got on the side. It was the guy who was always available, the guy who was mentally the toughest, the guy who had the most resilience, the guy who turned up at training regularly. And eventually they would, I suppose, cultivate a trust in the management. The management would look at people like that and say, who am I going to go to when the chips are down? Who am I going to go to in pressure scenarios? I'm going to go to the guy who's always available, who's always putting it in training, as opposed to maybe the guy who will turn up on occasions and maybe put in a really colourful and outstanding performance once every 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Invariably in the professional game, the coach wants the most reliable, and I think he's certainly developed into that for Munster.
There's a case he's the comeback. If there was a comeback award for comeback player of the year, he would definitely be right there, because it's a year and a bit since he was booed by his own fans.
Yeah, but and that is obviously, I know he said himself, that was a pretty harrowing part of his career, and it would be, and I think it was a low point for Munster support as well, and I think they're probably aware of it themselves. But I think it's important to note he's playing in the middle of this kind of fulcrum where there's O'Mahony, Stander and Conor Murray, and they're three absolutely world-class players. So, he's not shouldering all the responsibility, and in a way he's I suppose he's profiting from their experience and how effective they are. Yeah,
we should talk about them because they were absolutely sensational again. And even in a situation where they know that last year, and we had Conor Murray sitting there on Friday, and he was like, look, we're very aware of what happened last year, where we killed them and then went and lost the following week. And then they concede that try where it's clearly a set move, and it looks like the try that they conceded is off the training ground, because it looks like they've identified there will be two forwards who will be defending there, and Tate just kind of runs and looks and goes, oh, it is the two forwards. This is weird. It's exactly like we planned it, and no one can get a hand on him. And that could be very demoralising, because it's happened before and they've seen the movie, but it isn't. It's just like, no, we're going to go up and get some penalties and get some penalties and get some penalties, and suddenly there's a yellow card before half time. You think this game's over.
Yeah.
No matter what Leicester do now, Munster have them.
Yeah, I think that's it's a return to what they had probably 10 years ago at the height of their powers. Is the personnel, the go-to personnel, whether it used to be O'Connell, Foley, Quinlan, O'Gara, Stringer, they're getting to that kind of fulcrum again. Stander and O'Mahony are, they're British Lions standards. Obviously, they are from a level of seniority, from a level of leadership within the group. They're driving standards to where Munster haven't gone in that kind of last 5-6 years. So yeah, I mean, you add in the kind of young players coming through, like we mentioned at hooker.
Yeah.
Van Graan spoke about guys like Billy Holland doing hours and hours of video analysis behind the scenes. Obviously, Jerry Flannery is there, adding his experience. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of layers and fabric to where they've arrived at. It didn't just happen overnight,
And Van Graan is very keen to point it out as well. He's not a micromanager, is he?
No, I don't think so. I think he's been very smart. He's deflected attention away from himself, and why would he? Why wouldn't he?
I did this. It's like, well, you're there about a week, mate.
Yeah, exactly. But a pretty ideal start for him.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was interesting too. The camera angle at half time shows that it's Felix Jones, and it looked like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it looked like he was talking to the whole team, that everybody was actually listening to what Felix had to say, as opposed to it being just corralled amongst the backs. That was, I don't know, maybe that's just the way the camera angle at half-time was shown, but clearly he's somebody who they, like, again, Conor Murray's like, I really respect Felix because he did exactly what he's asking us to do. When he asked us to put our bodies in places, we know that he would do it. Yeah,
well, Felix's playing history was pretty incredible when you think he returned from a broken neck, to play rugby. Not only did he return from broken neck, he returned probably more aggressive and more physical in terms of how he used to run into contact. He'd no real regard for his own safety. And while that's kind of crazy when you think of the story, it's pretty admirable. And if you have a guy who then goes into coaching and expects commitment, what better way to respond than to look at a guy like him and say, well, he actually did it every week. So
Matt O'Connor obviously had a go at the refereeing after the first game, and Jordy Murphy was more than happy in the middle of the game to completely slate the referee, which I've never seen before. Like, these interviews are going to get way better if it's like, the referee's completely rubbish here. Yeah. Was the game completely refereed differently in terms of the breakdown?
I certainly think Munster played the referee better. I think apparently they had researched him during the week, and his interpretation at the breakdown they felt was different, and they didn't want to be overly competitive. Leicester have built, a dynasty on being a competitive team at the breakdown for 20 odd years. It's probably hard for them to reverse out of that because it's part of what makes them tick.
Yeah.
If you go to Welford Road, they're going to be pretty aggressive on the ground. But if the referee interprets it differently, it's very, very hard for them to change, a huge part of their character. So I just think Munster were a bit more pragmatic and managed him better. I mean, it is very tricky for teams to. Exeter had issues the previous week in the Leinster game about the interpretation from the ref. So, it's not going anywhere. It's not going to go away. You've got to play the ref. You've got to do your research on the ref. And if he's a different interpretation, so be it. You've got to play it and get on with it.
Because they always talk about the dark arts. And I think they mentioned the hand of back about 4 times in commentary last night. Yeah. And I think Dan Cole, his performance sums it all up. Because in the first half, I think it was Jean Klein who didn't roll away, but Dan Cole had his arm around him just to make sure he wasn't going to roll away. Yeah. And in commentary, Donnacha O'Callaghan was just like applauding him. He was like, he's the master of the dark arts. And then he goes crazy and gives away 5 penalties. And it just shows that very thin line between being a complete nutcase on the pitch and being very smart about it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not quite the dark arts when you're getting penalised.
Exactly.
Costing your team a game. It's maybe the opposite. Well, the stupid arts. But I think the greatest Leicester sides, such as Neil Back, they were the dark arts. He didn't get caught. That's the whole point. So
the medal looked very easy all the same.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Leinster, and Jimmy Kelly on Periscope is taking issue with your the small man. Leinster and their 50 players are hardly the small man. You mean in terms of budget, though? They've got 50 players because they've produced them all.
Yeah, well, within domestic Irish rugby, Leinster or Leinster are the are obviously probably the greatest kind of resources. I mean, in comparison with, say, French clubs like owned by Mohad Al-Trad, who's a billionaire. Yeah, so it is a bit different. What impressed you about Leinster's performance? Overall, I think again it would be a kind of non-specifically to speak about. It's just their grit, their determination to come back from a really, really difficult situation. You know, the game towards, you know, could they have had a worse first half? You know, 2 injuries to their obviously Johnny and then Ross Byrne. Yeah. Yellow cards, try concessions. You know, against the side who've gone to Saracens and gone to Montpellier and won. So they, you know, to go away and get a big, you know, European win or a big win in the Premiership for them, you know, it's a journey like any team makes when they go from being successful to being superb, is when they can go and win on the road when it really matters. So Exeter have already done that twice, and it wouldn't have been daunting for them to come into the Aviva setup and be whatever 17-3 up. So the fact that they couldn't hold on, or Leinster were able to reverse that.
Without Sexton, with Ross Byrne, I think Ross Byrne deserves great credit for just the physicality he endured in that game. He took a huge hit. He came back on. He was obviously able to pass that head injury assessment, but he took 1 or 2 other very, very heavy knocks. He wasn't quite able to control the game, or isn't quite able to control it like Johnny is just yet, but he's getting close. I mean, if you look at what we've just discussed around Ian Keatley, there's a rite of passage and a journey in every young out-half's career, and him coming through that 80 minutes and the team winning be a huge plus for Leinster and for Ross. Yeah, I mean, what do you think his long-term future is? Say, like, how long has Sexton got left? Say Sexton has 4 years left at the outside. Maybe he tries to make it to the World Cup after that. That would be a bit of a miracle given the battering that he takes as well. Can Leinster realistically keep 3 out-halves?
Well, I think most clubs would look to have 3 out-halves, yeah. I mean, obviously Johnny in 3 to 4 years will move on, and Ross Byrne would only be coming into his own at probably at 26, 27 at that stage. Joey Carberry is going to be there. Whether Leinster use him as an out-half is another issue. So, I think he's right in a driving position there. If he looks at his age, his potential future with, could be a great European side in the next 5-6 years.
But if you're an English club...
If I was an English club, we'd be going after it. I mean, I went over to England very similarly myself at the same age as Ross because I was a backup player. So, but it was a different environment. That was 17 years ago. Leinster weren't, a European.
Was around.
But I do think if I was an English club looking for a guy like, a backup 10 or a potential starting 10 going into next season, I'd certainly be having an eye on him. But this is going to be a challenge for all Irish rugby,
The Eason Asewa performance was incredible. I don't think anybody's ever played down his qualities, but I think it was just one example where you think to yourself, if Leinster are going to win the Champions Cup in the next few years, they need to do it while Asewa is still with them, because there was so much chaos happening all around the pitch, and Asewa was just sage-like in the middle of it all. He's like, no, we're going to keep taking the 3 points. Don't bother about the corner. We're going to keep plugging away here, and we're going to win this thing. And that calmness is completely invaluable.
Yeah, he is actually an incredible player on so many levels. I mean, he's defensively aggressive. He never makes mistakes when he's in possession. He almost always makes the right choice. He's unflappable. I mean, he just slots in a pressure European game, knocks over all his place kicks. And this is a guy he retired 2 years ago. I mean, even physically, when for most guys when they retire, it's like your body hits a moment of breakdown about 2-3 months after retirement. You just physically gives up on you. It happens to players all the time. To go away from the game for 2 years coaching and then just slot back into rugby, it's not like, it's so physical. It's getting more physical year by year. It's just pretty phenomenal what the guy can do, yeah.
Also, like, his kicking was always good/grand, but that was great. That was like a great kicking performance.
Yeah, he struck one just before half time like a loaf of bread. Went just about ducked over the crossbar, but the rest of his strikes even were excellent. Yeah, he's just, you know, I'd love to know, does he do any practice? He strikes me like the type of guy who probably doesn't bother and just knocks them all over anyway. So.
In terms of the other things that they had, Dan Levy coming into that back row as a replacement for Sean O'Brien, because there's this sense that, they're unbelievably deep, and then suddenly a couple of injuries happen, and actually they're not unbelievably deep really, and they certainly won't be next year if anybody else leaves. So it's really important that the Dan Leavys of the world remind everybody that they were once thought of as potential Ireland starters.
Yeah, I think Dan Levy did his Six Nations prospects no harm. He was, as the much used phrase, the impact substitute, but he really made a huge impact in terms of how he carried. Until his introduction, I think they lost the back row battle quite convincingly. They were behind there, and obviously they were hampered by the fact they had the 2 injuries in the first half to their key decision making players. So one thing I noticed is that in the first half they used Henshaw the way Ireland would. They just used him as a battering ram, and I would suspect that was somebody like Nasiwa coming in saying, chaos is happening here, let's do the most simple thing we can to hold on to the ball. That's not the way Leinster traditionally play, or are not effective that way. And as soon as the second half started, they had a chance to regroup. They started to attack off set piece, particularly off the scrum. They went wide the first 2 or 3 times, so they got a bit more momentum into their attack and into the game. And then bringing in a guy like Levy at that point, who was so aggressive and hungry, carrying the ball, looking to offload out of the tackle, and then obviously that lovely play back inside for Luke McGrath's finish. I mean, they really kind of tweaked things nicely, and the
basketball forward pass, the quarterbacking,
that was completely forward.
Yeah,
it was like, so it's really crappy to come on and complain about refereeing, but the refereeing in the first half looked abysmal to me, and it was it seemed very one directional in favour of Exeter. And then that, if I was Exeter, I'd be like, hang on a second here. Yeah. Hang on a second. Like, there's about 4 angles that don't show it, which helpfully whoever was looking after the replay at TV was like, no, nothing to see here. Get the kick on.
Well, maybe we deserved that kind of bit of look. At the outset, you were saying it was the English teams that tried to set up the European Cup in their favour. So maybe we deserved a little bit of refereeing look.
That's attacking in the second half. There was also, it seemed like a clear sense that at the ruck, if you had the chance to pick and go, so it was like, let's force them at the ruck. We're going to go narrow, and then we can also go wide. So as opposed to just having a single game plan, which the first half, for whatever reason, I suppose if Sexton goes off, you're a try down, Sexton's going off a minute into the game, it's like, this was not in our game plan.
No, well, I think what Exeter did in defence was, certainly when they got into that commanding lead, they stopped to compete for the ball at the ruck. So what they did was they put their defenders either side of the ruck, which means they've more in that defensive line. They 13, 14 guys at times. So Leinster needed to be smart. If you don't identify that and you start to run it to forwards beside the ruck or your 10, you're running into greater traffic and more defenders. So they actually picked and went straight through the middle in order to make Exeter have to make a choice. So Exeter had to actually start to put guys back into the ruck.
Who's identifying that? Who's coming in and saying...
I would have thought it's probably a mixture of the likes of Luke McGrath, who's actually seeing the little space at the base of a ruck and calling it to the forwards in front of him, or it's been identified from on high and brought in through a water bottle, or whatever way they do it these days.
Yeah, okay. A couple of quick comments coming through. Munster consistency, great to see, but Leicester are absolutely awful. You have to be realistic about the opposition. Munster should have beaten them twice, not the Munster of the noughties yet, says Neil Keegan. I think is that a bit...
I think it's a bit harsh. I think even that Leicester backline that started yesterday, and if you were to add in a guy like Eanna who had the broken jaw, if he'd have been there, I mean, it's a pretty world-class backline. Yeah. And Leicester are not ones to be trifled with up front either. I think that's as good a win as Munster have had in their European history. Yeah. So I think that's a bit harsh.
Yeah. Is it fair to say we're not quite sure how high the ceiling is for Munster? Because you look at the likes of Sam Arnold, Chris Clute, O'Byrne. These are players that we haven't exactly seen on the world stage. Whereas with Leinster, we've seen peak Johnny Sexton, we've seen peak Tadhg Furlong. Whereas there's a sense of the unknown here about Munster, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. And there are parallels, ironically, with Exeter, for example. Munster probably have 2 or 3 stars, but only that. Maybe Leinster have more marquee kind of names and players. But that kind of culmination of the last 3-4 years of background work for their academies. There's 3 or 4 guys who've come straight out of the AIL who are playing their trade now at European Cup level. That's phenomenally important for Munster. Again, with a smaller pool of players, a smaller pool of schools that are feeding into their academy system relative to Leinster. It's hugely important that they develop their AIL players, their under-20s players. So, yeah, it's difficult to see how far they can go. It's hard to predict it, but I mean, the fact that they won so convincingly in the end over in Welford Road with a team of, 5 or 6 relative unknowns in terms of European rugby, it's just hugely exciting for them.
The O'Mahony news obviously came through just before kick-off that he was going to be staying, and he signed a deal, and he's getting paid relatively well. Probably not the $1 million a year that he could have if he held out. And anyway, if you're Munster and you look at that and you look at what happened and you think, if we can just keep the nucleus of this team together, we can literally compete for the European Cup every year, for the Champions Cup every year, which will in turn feed everything that we need to do. How important is CJ Stander in that? Can you possibly replace him with somebody at half the price from the academy? Is there like
for Stander or
for Stander? Given that O'Mahony's a done deal now, Stander obviously hasn't been announced yet.
Yeah, I it's probably controversial, but I'd say you probably could replace him.
Right.
But I think O'Mahony would have been a greater loss, just based on who he is. Well, everything about his fabric seems to be like he is Mr. Munster, and he's the new Paul O'Connell. I think had he gone, it would have just left a hole in their whole emotional setup. It would have left a big gap, and it would have been a signal of intent from a guy who is literally cut him open and he bleeds Munster. If he'd have gone and left, it would have been a huge chasm in the whole Munster ethos. Yeah. I think Stander, while he represents a lot of similarities, maybe even the fact that his background is not born and bred in Munster, maybe they could have replaced him. I'm struggling to think of a guy.
Is Jack O'Donoghue the guy who comes in there, or do they look abroad?
He's very different though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's probably just not as abrasive. I mean, the way Stander carries in Welford Road, and the way he can just make small yards of momentum when he's absolutely no right to do it. That just does huge things for a team in terms of making the gain line and making ground. I think the irreplaceables, though, the absolute irreplaceables in the Munster setup were O'Mahony and Conor Murray.
Yeah, Murray was great again. Yeah. But also really good was Simon Zebo. Like at a level of maturity and creativity and bravery, and you're like, balls. It's really a pity.
Yeah, it is. It's a loss, both to Munster and to the Irish game. But we are gonna. I think it's just gonna keep happening. I think it's just gonna be regular news for the next couple of years, and I think the reality is we're gonna have to deal with it on a case by case basis. It's tricky for Joe Schmidt. It's tricky for David Nucifora how they're gonna manage it. It's just going to be a problem. It's like the economy that they're in. It's just the nature of sport. Yeah.
And last quick word about Ulster. Obviously, it was a real dire situation for them heading into the back-to-back fixtures. Things have improved drastically. I saw somebody say it was better for them that Quins had beaten La Rochelle, but ultimately it wasn't really. If La Rochelle had beaten Quins, then Quins maybe I think ultimately for their group.
Well, I think it's still within Ulster's hands.
They have La Rochelle at home.
Yeah, I mean,
huge.
Yeah, I mean, a French side who have no real interest going into the last game away from home. You'd like to think Ulster would get a bonus point potentially there, but to enter to finish these 2 games now having the potential qualification in their own hands is a massive result for Ulster.
But losing Lely Fano after Friday's performance is just like, it's obvious that he's going to be a huge loss. Yeah. And then you watch Friday's match and you're like, this is an even bigger loss than I initially even imagined, because they're certainly in the right place, Cooney and Marshall. Yes. But any half-back pairing is going to be weakened by the loss of Christian Lely Fano.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would say in an ideal world you'd be looking at young Irish out-halves coming through and learning their trade there as well, because if you look at the 3 guys in Munster, for example, who were fighting it out, you've got JJ Hanrahan, Keatley and Blaine Dodd, who's now Irish qualified. There's 3 guys fighting for it, and there's Lely Fano, who's not Irish qualified, obviously, starting European games up there. So a big loss for Ulster right now. For Irish rugby, I think they need to get a guy in there who's who's competitive and at Irish international level for their long-term benefits as well.
All right, Andy, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us, you can tweet us here at Off The Ball, or we're also on facebook.com/Off The Ball. And remember to turn on the subscription so whenever we go live, you get notifications about that. Now, a quick clip from yesterday's newspaper review. We're going to talk football next, but here we go. This is, of course, available for podcast. A brilliant weekend of Sunday newspapers, and typically great stuff from the lads here. Have a look.
Just the people who come in from this from the outside, right? Because there's a lot of people probably listening to this who maybe haven't been following the details of this, and then you read at one point through that salbutamol is considered a doping product only beyond a certain level. Like, even that line alone, so you're thinking, well, so it's well known that this is a product that has a doping sort of impact as such. It is illegal beyond a certain point, and you're reading how Froome in this stage wanted to show he was healthy to take a couple of more puffs from his inhaler to sound good during his post round interview, and you're just left with that small bit of suspicion. But my point is, you go to the back of the paper and there's a column piece, and way more personal, from David Walsh speaking about his relationship with Chris Froome and how he now doubts him, whereas in the middle of the paper the piece leaves you believing it to be slightly more sympathetic, you would say, towards this case.
So, I mean, the page 13 piece, it does outline that point about how he seemed to take a few puffs of his inhaler right before doing a TV interview after the race, and then obviously he'd be going into doping control pretty shortly afterwards. And maybe the implication there is that's partly what's contributed to him being double the limit, that he took these puffs so close to doping control. I don't know if that's legitimate science or not, but it seemed like a strange one, to be honest. And it seems that he's saying that Froome is wary of inhaling on camera during races, that he tends to avoid doing that, although there is footage of him doing it in certain races. I mean, the page 13 piece is almost as much as anything about the Brailsford-Froome relationship.
Dynamic.
Yeah, and like the headline, for instance, on that page 13 piece, the inside piece, is Froome did not support Brailsford last year, now it's payback time. So he says at one point, Brailsford has not gone beyond his matter-of-fact support for Froome in the statement. Within the team, there's a sense that since last year's controversies with Wiggins, the TUEs and the infamous Jiffy Bag, Brailsford's relationship with his number one rider has been nothing more than businesslike. Froome did not support him back then, and now there is a sense of payback. A source within the team claims it would be presumptuous to believe that Team Sky were funding Froome's defence. Officially, the team refuses to say.
Yeah, so more available paper podcasts on iTunes. Just search for Off The Ball Sunday Paper Review. That's Dan and Joe talking about the Chris Froome situation. Let's run you through the Premier League results, and then we'll get some reaction to the biggest story of the weekend, which is, of course, Manchester City's absolute hammering of Spurs. That one finished 4-1 at the Etihad yesterday. Big win for West Ham at Stoke. Arsenal beat Newcastle by 1-0. Brighton and Burnley was scoreless. Chelsea beat Southampton 1-0. Huddersfield at Watford, 4-1 winners, and a big away win as well for Crystal Palace at Leicester, 3-0 in that game. And then yesterday's two fixtures, a 4-0 hammering of Bournemouth by Liverpool. Mo Salah with 20 goals before Christmas in all competitions for Liverpool, scoring at a rate of even better than Ian Rush and Luis Suarez. And Manchester United 2-1 winners, holding on for dear life at the end against West Brom. Martin Lipton is on the line to talk to us mainly about the Manchester City Spurs game. Martin, just how high a level are Manchester City playing at the moment, if we were to compare them to the great teams of the Premier League era and even beyond that?
Well, you can't call them one of the great teams until they've won something. But you can say that we are looking at the formation of one of the great teams, it appears, because they are going to destroy all Premier League records, it seems to me, this season. And if there's a better team in Europe, I'm not sure who they are. They're absolutely magnificent. They're a joy to watch, an absolute privilege to see a team playing with so much confidence, so much energy, enthusiasm, danger. They're just absolutely brilliant. And they took Spurs to the cleaners, apart from that little spell just after half-time when Tottenham were to a degree on top, albeit then it was just a high wire act. You always thought they were going to fall off and plunge to their deaths, and lo and behold, that's what they did. But they could have been 4 up at half-time. They were just scintillating. They're beautiful to watch.
The other, and I think the most important thing in all this, is that they're nowhere near their peak just yet. They're nowhere near their peak physically. They're nowhere near their peak in terms of age. They're really only discovering each other's talents and skill sets. And you really do feel like this could evolve into something over the next 18 months, 2.5, 3 years.
they're just brilliant, and they you can only see them getting better. Obviously, injuries can take a toll, but they're playing without two of their first choice defence, and you wouldn't know it because of the way they're playing. And the other thing, of course, is they can go out and buy 3 more players if they want to, and strengthen again because they have this huge financial advantage. And I shouldn't blame them for that. I see Antonio Conte moaning about City spending. I think the idea that the manager of Chelsea should moan about another club having a financial advantage is utterly preposterous. What goes around comes around.
Martin, were you surprised with the ease that Manchester City had in scoring against Spurs? Because we haven't seen it too often this season, but Tottenham obviously forced Ederson into a lot of long balls. He hit almost 20 long balls during the match, which is a multiple of what he usually hits in a Premier League match, because obviously teams parked a bus against Manchester City. But Manchester City have this plan B of going in behind a team. It brought the best out of Leroy Sané, obviously, who had a lot of joy against Kieran Trippier. But it's something we've rarely seen in the Premier League this season, that it's almost this next level for Manchester City, that their plan B is almost as good as their first option.
Yeah, well, they don't really have that. Some places did that in the States, didn't they? They scored a goal against Spurs in the pre-season game with a long ball from Ederson. And clearly it is their other tactic when the press is on. Would it have been different if Alderweireld and Sanchez had both been there, if Wanyama had been fit, if Dembele was Dembele, which he clearly isn't? He's a pale shadow of that player. His injuries, I think, have taken a fairly brutal toll on him. So, it may have been different if Spurs had been able to play with the back 3 as they wanted, with a better defensive setup. But how do you know it would have been different? They're just brilliant. They may have won by more. That's the thing. I don't know if when City play like that, if anyone has the weaponry to stop them. I'm not sure anyone does. They're just a phenomenal team with fantastic players, and sometimes you just have to sort of put your hands up and acknowledge true greatness, and that's what we're seeing there.
Is this the plateau for this Spurs team, Martin? Because looking at the season to date, obviously we have the Real Madrid result, and it's an unbelievable result. But then you start to think that this is potentially so unlucky for Pochettino, that his great era at Spurs is just going to coincide with the great Pep Guardiola era at Manchester City, and there's nothing to be done about that. But then you look at it in a different way, and they're 10 points behind Manchester United, and there's a certain sense potentially of even underachievement there about Spurs this season. Is that too harsh on this Spurs team?
They're playing every game away from home.
Well, that's fair.
That makes a massive difference. Actually, their home results aren't that bad. They haven't got the biggest squad. They've lost key players. Wanyama's not kicked a ball since August. He's a big player for them. They needed to have him in. Alderweireld is their best defender. He's the best defender in the Premier League. He'll be out for 3 or 4 months. When you have injuries like that to key players and you haven't got a big squad, it'll take its toll. Also, Dele Alli isn't playing as well as he did at the end of last season. Harry Kane is slightly hampered, I think, by injuries. He's still scoring goals and still a danger and still a threat. So they've gone back a bit from last year. Last year was an exceptional year for Tottenham. They have dropped off a little bit from that. I still think that if they're 2 points behind fourth, having had a bad season so far, if they find some sort of form, they can get into the top 4. They won the Champions League group against the champions. They got more points than anybody else did in the Champions League. They're not that bad. They're just not as good as they were last season at the moment. It happens sometimes.
How high do they need to finish to keep the likes of Ali and Kane next summer?
They don't have to finish anything. They're going to keep them come what may. Kane's not going anywhere. Ali's not going anywhere this summer. Kane wants to stay at Spurs. He's determined to lead them into the new stadium. Ali, I think, will stay 1 year because the wrong agent gets the money if he moves this summer. So therefore, he stays another year. If next year's a disappointment as well, then things change. I think they've got to sort out a bit more strength in depth. They've got to decide on fullbacks. Pochettino will have the money to do that. He's done a pretty good job, let's be honest. If they finish 4th or 5th this year, it's still been the 3 best years of Tottenham for 50 years. Let's put it in context.
Just to go back to City, to wrap this up, if at the start of the season you'd said that they were playing so well and they were going to go on this streak with Otamendi, Mangala and Fabian Delph as 3 of their back 4, people would have looked at you sideways. And that's the other aspect of this, that clearly he's been able to invest and buy really well, and adding Kyle Walker was a huge point for that back 4 and just the way he wants to play. But there is also a sense that Guardiola is improving the players, and they aren't the shambolic defence that the influence Ederson has had on that whole defensive setup too, compared with last season. That this isn't just about signing great attacking players. He also has got the team to understand that they have a collective defensive responsibility as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, the big difference is the goalkeeper. This is a goalkeeper who can actually catch the ball. As we said last season, time and time again, it's all well and good having a keeper who's good with his feet. You want one who's good with his hands, primarily, and Bravo wasn't, and Ederson is. And that has made a difference. So, last season, every 2 shots on target, you fancied one of them would go in. In fact, every 2 shots on target, you fancied 2 of them would go in. It's not the same anymore. You have to work hard to score against them in the way you didn't. He always wanted to play with inverted fullbacks. The ones he had last season weren't up to it. The ones he has this season are. Fabian Delph, though, has been a revelation at left back. Absolutely terrific. It's really a surprise for everyone, I think, including Fabian Delph. Mangala's defending far better than he did before. So, again, there's a bit of confidence about the whole team where everyone feels more positive because they expect to win every game rather than expect to make a mistake. And if you're a defender and you know your keeper's going to bail you out, it makes mistakes less likely. If you fear your goalkeeper's going to make a mistake every time you make a mistake, i.e. it will be a goal, then you tend to be more negative and nervous, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So all these things come together, but you also got to give credit to the manager who has taken this squad and built this team and made them absolutely phenomenal.
Martin, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
No trouble. Take care.
Martin Lipton there giving us some thoughts on an absolute mullering of Spurs by Man City.
Yeah, we're definitely at the point now where we're over the title race.
It's enjoying this as a work of performance art.
Absolutely, and the interesting thing is that old cliche of, you need a little bit of luck to win the Premier League just doesn't apply this year. They've left nothing down to luck. The only bit of luck they've had is that Kevin De Bruyne and Raheem Sterling survived those 2 challenges on Saturday evening. That is potentially, if both of those were leg breakers, that is the only thing that could have potentially ended the season, or ended the title race, or created a title race and ended City's dominance a little bit. They would need to get 2 serious injuries to 2 of their best attacking weapons for that to happen. But unfortunately, Dele Alli and Harry Kane failed miserably in their bid.
All right, so we did have the Battle of the Banya last week as Jose Mourinho burst into Man City's dressing room to quieten their celebrations. As Danny Taylor detailed in his Sunday Observer column, though, he wasn't the first to do it.
Daniel Taylor his column on a Sunday is always very good, and in the Observer today he actually has his main piece is about Mourinho, but he goes into referring to a story about this tunnel incidents and the great Brian Clough playing against Wimbledon and the crazy gang, and I think Brian Clough used to belt out Sinatra numbers before the game on the sound system or whatever, on the stereo in the dressing room.
Right.
Wimbledon come in, they always like to make their presence felt. Yeah. Their way of announcing, they did not care who they upset, and they tried on a Forest one year. So with the corridors of the City ground vibrating, Clough sent his assistant Alan Hill to knock on the door of the away dressing room. Vinnie Jones opened the door wearing nothing but his underpants, nodded the request, but then turned it back up again. A few minutes later, the door knocked. Clough marched into Wimbledon's dressing room, lifted their Getter blaster above his head and dropped it on the tile floor. Now play your music, he said, before marching back to the Wimbledon, marching back out of the room. None of the Wimbledon players uttered a word, apparently. That's real presence right there, I think, in terms of sorting out a tunnel dispute. So some good stuff there.
I'm surprised Brian Clough didn't get thumped. Anyway, John Duggan is here. How you doing?
Ger, how you doing? Good morning.
You're obviously...
How are you?
You've just done a Spurs item, guys, so it was underneath my jumper, so I said, okay, I'll a bit of solidarity for Spurs.
Yeah, you're not hiding the fact that you're a Spurs fan.
No. Well, I think I've been pretty demonstrative on Twitter for many years.
We all knew it's true.
I think Martin Lipton was getting a little bit touchy with me there for suggesting that this could be viewed as a bit of a failure from Spurs, or potentially just a lack of kind of luck with the circumstances. That I would have thought that Premier League title is what they need to make Harry Kane a Spurs player forever.
Well, win a trophy, that'll be good. Get into next season's Champions League, that is crucial now. I think they'll actually do well in this Champions League, this campaign, because there's absolutely no pressure on. But it's worrying, given I was at the City game a year ago and they murdered Manchester City at White Hart Lane. And obviously moving away from the stadium has not been a great thing. And they've got a thin squad, and also bringing out Bucks as a manager midway through the season is never the best idea, in my opinion.
Let's talk racing. That's why you're here. Douvan is all over all the back pages today. Just tell us about why Douvan matters so much.
Because Willie Mullins, who's the champion trainer, has said this is potentially the best horse he's ever had. He's won 14 out of 16 races. You think of Sizing John won 3 Gold Cups this year, Irish Punchestown and Cheltenham Gold Cup. He was 7 times behind Douvan. So when you look at Douvan's races, easily, unextended, very easily, the horse is a machine. And Willie Mullins has had so many great horses through, like Faheen, Addy Power, Min, Hurricane Fly, that this horse is so good that it's a real shame now that he's got a leg injury, which is going to rule him out for the season. He's only 7 years of age, but what Willie has done with the owner, Rich Ritchie, has been conservative about bringing him back in a year and a half, but he just doesn't want to risk the horse's well-being.
A year and a half means the whole calendar year of 2018 is gone?
No, yeah, when you consider the seasons from November till April, I mean, yeah, effectively, we're not going to see him for another year.
Okay, so maybe next November you might see him?
Yeah, but you might see him back, but you won't see him at, say, the big festivals, the spring festivals, where everything is judged. Yeah. So Cheltenham, he won twice at Cheltenham. He won the Supreme Novices Hurdle and the Arkle Chase. So it's just a real shame. It means that the champion chase at Cheltenham is wide open. You'll have Min, another Willie Mullins and Rich Ritchie horse, Altior, Fox Norton, they'd be the main horses. But Douvan was just so exciting to watch that it's a real disappointment. And this disappointment stems from the fact that the only defeat he had over fences was in the champion chase last March when he was 7th and fractured his pelvis. So these horses had injury problems. They're so hard to keep right.
And is the injured pelvis connected to this injury?
No, this is a leg injury. It's a separate thing.
Okay.
That had cleared. This is a leg injury. Willie's not going to risk it. He's not going to risk the horse's well-being for the sake of another victory or two.
It's fair enough, really.
What were the murmurings from the Mullins camp? What was the plan for Douvan in Cheltenham next year?
The plan for Douvan, I think, would have been to go over 2 miles. Willie has never won the champion chase, so I think they would have run him at Christmas on the second day of the Leopardstown Festival, and I think they would have run him in the champion chase at Cheltenham. Of course, a lot of speculation was that if he could beat Sizing John 7 times, are they going to step him up and trip for the Gold Cup over 3 miles? That would have been possibly an option, but unfortunately that option doesn't exist right now, so it's a real shame.
Okay, so we actually don't know what the future
no, we
when
don't.
He comes back.
When he comes back, is it going to be 2 miles, 3 miles? But I mean, the thing is, will he come back now?
Yeah, okay. And then just briefly, there was a 200-to-1 winner at the weekend.
Yeah.
What was the story with this?
Killahara Castle ran 20 times and was nowhere. But it was only a 6-runner race. And the horse was trained locally in Holy Cross near Thurles, where the race was run by, I think it was John Burke. Martin Burke, his brother, rode the horse, and the sister, Elaine, owns it. So a real family affair. Right. So he was 999 to 1 on Betfair. And there's somebody I know that had £4 on. And this is true because I've shown it to your producer. I've shown him the WhatsApp. I got this WhatsApp yesterday into my phone about 5 o'clock. I was, what's this? Oh, you've had a winner. It might have been whatever, a 40 to 1 shot. Yeah. And then I checked it on the Racing Post. And it was like 200 to 1. I said, what did you get this at? 999 to 1. He took a chance for £4. Happy Christmas, folks. Yeah. So it's the biggest prize winner in Irish racing history. 1973, there was a 100 to 1 winner at the Curragh. And in Kelso in 1990, Equinoctial was a 250 to 1 winner. But this is the greatest prize winner in Irish racing history. And I'm amazed that bookmakers would have had it at 200 to 1 in a 6-runner race.
Yeah. Do you know why this happened? Was it just because of circumstances, or was there a little bit of shrewd behaviour going on here?
There was no shrewd behaviour. I just think the horse, I think that they said that the horse kind of carried her head a bit funny in her previous races, and it just, one of these things, it just worked out. Maybe some of the others ran below par, but it was just a bit of a freak result.
Mm-hmm. Happy days for your mate.
Happy Christmas. Yeah, he's not going to give me any money though.
999, 4 times 4 nines. That's not a bad weekend's work. Right, good stuff, John. Thanks very much for that. We just needed to update you on what the story was with Douvan. Let's get some Eanna O'Connor here speaking with Oisin after a sensational win for Moorefield.
Well, after the miracle of Moorefield, I'm joined by Eanna O'Connor. Eanna, what were you thinking with about 10 minutes to go, we'll say in the 53rd minute, when they just got their second goal and looked like they were going to ramp home?
We thought we'd keep at it. Our mantra is keep fighting till the last whistle. We've been in that situation several times before, and we really fight well, and we have our backs to the wall. So delighted for the win.
What brought you into it? What was the difference in that last, I was going to say 7 minutes, but it was really 10 minutes when you take injury time into account?
I'd say we just didn't make many mistakes. We forced Lomond into plenty of mistakes. It took the Shenandoah Ronan Sweeney to to get us back into the game. So yeah, no, look, we just kept fighting and we showed great composure there towards the end.
And you used the ball well and you stayed calm. Where does that composure come from?
Well, we got together the 16th of November 2016. Absolutely delighted. We put in some really hard work over Christmas. Look, the composure, we work on it every week in training. So yeah, we're just delighted. It's all from hard work.
Go and enjoy the celebration.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Lots of pats on the back and a Kerry hat there. Oisin, you were at the game. Fairly sensational stuff. Oh, you were clearly at the game, given that you were doing the interview at the game.
Yeah.
Quality work there, Jar. Yeah, unbelievable. We were talking about great comebacks a little bit earlier on. It's up there with Liverpool and Istanbul, with Leinster against Northampton.
I think the most apt one is the Super Bowl, because you have a great comeback combined with a spectacular collapse, which yesterday was.
And due to a spectacular leader in Ronan Sweeney, kind of in that Tom Brady role. And there was one stage when he kept the ball alive for Murnahan, another kind of experienced guy, to get the winning score. It was just how you would define leadership on a field.
So just explain what happened, will you?
Okay, yeah. Well, it was neck and neck through a lot of the first half, and then Moorefield more or less took over. They were 3 clear at the break. And what they did was they pushed up on the kickouts, and Lomans struggled. And then Lomans obviously copped on at half-time, well, why don't we kick up on their kickouts? And that's what they did, and Ken Casey got a goal, and they got another goal about 7 minutes to go, and you think, okay, that's it, 6 points in it. Goose Cook, John Heslin's dropping back, he's winning ball. Moorefield can't get a hand on them, and then all of a sudden they get a score, and you think, okay, maybe something here, maybe they're not done yet, but they need a goal. They haven't looked like they're going to get a goal all day. They started running at them. Murray from centre back was absolutely excellent. Ronan Sweeney winning ball, just wouldn't let them out of defence, and then even for the goal, it was a great run and set up for Sweeney, who absolutely buried it. I mean, it was an absolute beautiful goal. They scored 1-4 without reply from like the 53rd minute to the 6th minute of injury time. There were 6 minutes of injury times. Paul Sharry got sent off, which was a massive loss. At the time when he did it, I thought, smart guy, well done, do what you have to do. But as I said to Joe yesterday on air, when he was saying, why didn't they just bring them down and tackle them? And of course, we've never seen that kind of cynicism in Gaelic football before. I said, well, you can only do that if you can get your hands on them. And they couldn't. Moorefield just upped the intensity. Their fitness was absolutely amazing. Eanna O'Connor was brilliant, like steely from frees. Ronan Sweeney obviously did what Ronan Sweeney does. I mean, even in the first couple of minutes, he went on a lung-bursting run up the park, and I thought to myself, he's 37. God, what a footballer he is, what a man he is. And it was just, the good players took over, and everyone else worked hard as well, and they were just pitched fitness-wise perfectly.
It's strange how they completely changed Lomans, as in once Moorefield get that goal, they keep kicking it long, and then they lose the first ball they play long. They're like, oh crap, okay, we need to start short passing now. And clearly they hadn't practiced a short passing game. They weren't able to pass the ball around competently and calmly in their own half. Then they lose Sharry. That's a big loss. That could have stemmed the tide a little bit. You don't know what's going to happen. But also, I don't know who the player was, but kicking that free away that Eanna O'Connor had at the end, just giving that extra 10 yards. I know it's being smart after the fact, and we don't know what would have happened anyway.
The weird thing is that Eanna O'Connor actually didn't strike that free well. He absolutely scuffed it. And Ronan Sweeney got under it and kept it alive and kind of guided it with the hand into Murnahan, and he popped it over, and that was the winner. You could actually see people in the stand saying, is that the winner, or is it level now? Because people were just so confused by it. It was so frantic. But Lomans, I don't think they had to be in that kind of situation before. They've come back in games. Like, their thing is to let you ahead and come back. In the Leinster Championship in Westmeath, aside from maybe the first round, they breezed it. They didn't really get a challenge.
But the comeback was done in their minds.
Yeah, and you could even see it on the sideline. When you look down at a bench and you see guys kind of ready to come on, ready to celebrate. Oh. And it was like that, and I think it's very easy to say maybe they shouldn't have made subs, maybe they should have made subs. But as I said to Luke Dempsey after the game, was it just a case that Moorefield had momentum, and with the players they have, and keep in mind he's their former manager, he knows them better than anyone, it was going to be impossible to stop them. And he said, yeah, now I know a losing manager would take the excuse if offered, but it was an amazing comeback, but not out of any fluke. I mean, this was because Moorefield are an incredibly good team with incredibly good players.
Can they win the All-Ireland from here?
I haven't seen too much of Corofin, but I think they can. I think with Moorefield, because they come late in games, it was the same with Rathnew. They put the boot down in the last 20 minutes of that game, and even before that against Portlaoise, it was a late comeback in Portlaoise.
So it's Corofin in the semis, and it's Nemo.
If they beat Fulham Irish.
Yes. Yes, of course. Sorry, Fulham Irish pinning me up on the dressing
Don't get
room.
ahead of yourself there.
So Fulham Irish or Corofin, I would fancy them because I think they have the composure, they have the experience, they certainly have the fitness, and they can get the scores when they need.
You fancy Moorefield over Corofin?
I do, but I'm going to put a caveat on that in the sense that I haven't seen too much of Corofin or Fulham Irish.
Fair enough. The last time Moorefield got out of Leinster, I think it was Crokes beat them when it was Pico and Brosnan, 06-07 direction.
Yeah, 06, yeah.
And apparently Brosnan, I don't remember this game at all. He just charges through the middle in classic Owen Brosnan fashion, and that was it. That was done. But it was obviously after a replay, so they came pretty close to the promised land before. 2 players remaining from that, Sweeney being one of them. So there's a bit of nous there when it comes to
Darren Flynn as well, and Darren Flynn was absolutely great. Now, what did he do on the park? I couldn't tell you, but I know he did a whole lot of... No, but what I mean is, it seems harsh.
What do you do, Flynn?
He did a whole pile of stopping and winning the ball back. The stuff what we used to call the Simon Easterby role in rugby, the unseen work.
Can the O'Connors translate their club form to inter-county? Are they that good?
Free-taking wise, Eanna is, absolutely he is. And he was really good on the ball as well, so he definitely can. I've no doubt from what I saw yesterday and from what I saw in Rathnew as well, against Rathnew in Aughrim. I've no doubt in that.
So, and is that on the cards? Like, obviously, no one's going to be playing any inter-county football until they get knocked out, or Paddy's Day, whichever comes first. I'm
not sure. I'll take the manager's excuse here and say, look, Jerry, I'm only looking one game at a time, and he looked at yesterday. But I'm sure it'll happen. Of course, it seems to me to be an inevitable. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, all right. The other thing we wanted to talk to you about at the weekend was, of course, the Sleepout. This was on Saturday night as well, so you went straight from the Sleepout to the Moorefield game. But it looked, just following it on Twitter, like there was a great atmosphere, if quite a sombre atmosphere.
That actually is a great way of putting it. People were there because they wanted to do something to draw attention to this issue, and the homelessness issue is multi-strand, is the way I'd put it. On Saturday night, we actually got to meet, a lot of homeless people and talk to them about their story. And look, there's no doubt that addiction and just bad circumstances that you might fall into plays a role. But then there's also the people we didn't meet on that night, which is the families and the people who've lost their homes because someone has lost a job and they're living in hotels, or people who you don't see who are struggling, because there's a lot of that as well. People were reflective, and they were they were there because they wanted to make a difference. Now, how exactly that difference will be made this early in their campaign, I don't think even the Gaelic Voices for Change know. But when last I checked, late last night, they had raised 180,000. So that's a good start. And even it's not even about money to them; it's about raising the issue and talking about it, because I think we always assume when these things are talked about in the news and on programmes like on News Talk and whatever, we always assume that people know about the issue because it's talked about by the media, and it's not necessarily the case. I mean, you do kind of need your heroes, like your sporting heroes, like the Dublin Camogie team were there en masse, Dublin ladies footballers, a lot of them were there. Sinead Finnegan was there, Conor Callaghan was out sleeping, Pat Gilroy, and most of the hurlers were out sleeping. You do need people to draw attention to it. You do need those kind of people in that kind of circle to draw attention to it, and they did it in Dublin and they did it around the country as well. And sombre but energised is the way I'd put it, and it's kind of weird. I stayed up all night and had great chats with the likes of Mickey Brennan, formerly of Cavan, and David Brady. Obviously, how could you not have good crack with David Brady? But we also talked about the issue and talked to people.
Brady wrote a great piece. I don't know where I read it. Was it on the Facebook page?
Might have been his own blog, because everyone was able to put up their own reason for doing it on their
and so he was saying that he met a guy from his hometown on the street in Dublin who was homeless, and they had coffee, and he just listened to his story, and it really struck him for the first time that he understood exactly how this happens to so many people in our country, despite the fact that the economy is booming and we're supposed to be in full employment. Like, it's one of the greatest scandals and blights on our society and on us as a people that we've ever had. So, like, anything that helps to remind people of the fact that this is going to be a bleak Christmas for thousands and thousands of people, for families particularly, it's grim.
So fixable. Like, you can go on a housing programme now and build social housing, and you'll never solve the problem. There will always be a problem because, like I say, it's multi-strand, but it's such a fixable issue. And that's the really, really frustrating thing.
All right, Oisin, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. We do actually just have time for one more special guest on the show, and I'm delighted to say Jack O'Connor joins us. Jack, a proud father yesterday. You've obviously been involved in some unbelievably successful teams, from schools to underage to inter-county. How does yesterday compare in terms of the enjoyment that you took from it?
Yeah, but it was a really dramatic finish there. Oisin, to be honest with you, I was just saying to my young player, Eanna, we won a Hogan Cup with Colosh and Skelligan in the same pitch in 2009, and he got a goal with the last kick of that game to win it by a point. And but yesterday to come back from 6 down with a minute to go in normal time was something else, and it's a testament to the spirit and the character of that club, Moorefield, you know, and just really dramatic and fantastic to be part of it.
That 09 game isn't the famous game against Jarlath, is it?
No, that was a semi-final in 2002. This was a Hogan Cup final in 09, which we actually won, and you know, it was very dramatic and a very special game for myself and my family. But yesterday was all about Moorefield and the spirit that they've shown. I suppose was testament to the spirit that they've shown all the year, because they were in serious holes, you know, not just yesterday, but in several games during the year, and it's no coincidence that they keep coming back.
Yeah, I do. Like, it's great to see somebody like Ronan Sweeney at this stage of his career getting the sense of fulfilment. Now, afterwards, in the aftermath of it, he said, "This is the greatest competition I've ever played in," and I can totally understand why anybody like Ronan Sweeney, you know, 17 years after he kind of burst onto the national consciousness in the year 2000 as part of that Kildare team that beat the Dubs, finally kind of getting that sense of fulfilment and enjoyment from this.
Yeah, he's a remarkable man. I mean, he's threatened to retire several times in the last few years, but he's just a remarkable leader of men. And you know, his best years are behind him when it comes to, you know, athleticism and maybe pace and whatever. But he's got a character and leadership ability that you can't buy. And I think you know, himself and James Murray in the last, I suppose, 7 or 8 minutes of that game, you know, they more than anyone pulled it out of the fire, because, you know, many of the team would have given up, many players would have given up, but they just kept going, and you know, I'm 30 years involved in coaching, but it still comes back to the leadership of players on the pitch. That's what it comes down to, you know. Managers and coaches and whatever can only do so much, but if you have players on the field with never say die attitude like Ronan Sweeney, you always have a chance, and just tremendous for him. Like, you know, at this stage of his career, I think he's 37. You know, to be still able to produce it and still, you know, still produce moments of magic like that.
Morning, Jack. You mentioned Colosh and Skellige there. You've obviously been involved fairly successfully with Cairns O'Rahilly's in the past, so you're well used to the non-county scene and having good success with club teams and with college teams and stuff like that. But this, just by the way you're talking there, this seems to be one of the most special moments. Like, you're involved with the Kerry under-20s, you're a busy man, but this seems like something you're very emotionally invested in, this Moorefield team.
Well, it's self-interest in a way, like, because my 2 young lads are up here, you know, Cian and Eanna are working up here in Kildare now, and that's where their roots are, and sure, it's just fantastic for me to be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, come up and see the lads and help the Moorefield lads out. So it's fantastic for me. I mean, I'm enjoying every bit of it, and it's great to sample the, you know, the spirit of Kildare up here, and the spirit of club football up here. It's great. Like, it's a bit different to Kerry football, and it's just a tremendous experience for me. You know, myself and my wife have had a great year, you know, up and down to the lads and going to the matches. So she wasn't able to go yesterday, unfortunately, because she had a recent operation, but she was watching on the box. But yeah, I have to say, you know, I've enjoyed every minute of it, and you know, really looking forward to, you know, to getting maybe stuck in with the lads after Christmas and having a right cut at this, because, you know, it's once in a lifetime chance, you know. Kildare clubs, you know, don't win an awful lot of Leinster Club Championships, and you know, this is a great chance for Moorefield, you know, with the spirit they have. They can really have a go at this thing, you know.
Eanna said it was a bit different from Kerry club football when he first moved up as well. What are the differences, Jack?
Well, look, I mean, I suppose it's in the Kerry DNA that you know, we move the ball probably more by foot down there, whereas in Kildare it's by and large their natural game is a running game. You know, I mean, for example, the Moorefield half-back line yesterday kicked 3 points from play. Whereas maybe in Kerry we'd probably say that the half-back's job is to feed the forwards and feed the inside forwards especially. But you know, I think that's the main difference. I'm not saying which is better or which is worse or whatever. I'm just saying that is a big difference. You know, that Kildare would probably play more of an emphasis on athleticism and running, and Kerry probably would put more of an emphasis on kicking. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying one is better than the other, you know? That's
all right. I'm from Kildare. I can say that the Kerry way of doing things has been a bit more successful down through the years. You can be polite and not make that point. Just one last thing about this, obviously. Eanna is kind of really shooting out the lights at the moment and looks like he would not be out of place at all in inter-county football. Is that something that you think could be part of his future and that he would be interested in playing inter-county football with Kildare?
Look, I'll be honest with you. The main thing at the moment is that, you know, he's settled in his job. He has his full-time job now down in Port Allen and working with a good Kerryman down there, Pat Gallivan from Dingle, and he's happy in his job and he's happy in life in general, and he's enjoying his football. That's at the end of the day, football is a pastime. It's not the be all and end all to play in the county football. Himself and Cian are really enjoying their football at the moment. I'm enjoying having an involvement with them. That's where it's at. Sure, look, when this campaign is over, you know, that's for another day. But right now, he's enjoying his football, and when you're enjoying something, you're usually better at it, you know.
Jack, just before we let you go, I must ask you about David Clifford, because obviously with the new rules coming in next year, if he plays with the seniors at any point next year, he's not going to be eligible for your under-20s team. Has there been an agreement reached yet with him and Fitzmaurice about how this is going to work?
Yeah, well, we've had a chat about it, yeah, along with the chairman, Tim Murphy, yeah. And look, I mean, more than anything else, you know, I'd love to have a Clifford involved with Kerry on the 20s next year, because, you know, he could be the difference between us winning and not winning it. But, you know, he's such a remarkable talent that he you know, the least he deserves is a go with the, you know, with the Kerry seniors in the National League. And I think that'll tell, you know, the National League will tell whether he's up to the level or not. You know, he will get to the level, but whether he's up to that level this year remains to be seen. And he's a remarkable talent. He's the best minor we've seen, I suppose, over the last 20 or 30 years. And the only minor that I can think of that came close to being as dominant as him, the only Kerry minor was Seamus Moynihan that I can think of. Moynihan was a remarkable minor. I mean, he was a senior. You know, 6 months after playing minor. So remains to be seen. He's a remarkable talent, but you know, if he doesn't make the cut this year, he'll certainly make it, you know, in the next year or so.
Jack, it sounds like you're loving being involved with the various teams that you are involved with at the moment, that your passion for football is burning as brightly as it ever did.
Oh, sure, listen, hi, come here, sure, that's what we'll be doing, you know. It's a great pastime, and it just keeps us young and keeps us motivated. And, you know, I have to say that the bit of a campaign over Moorefield has given me great enjoyment. And the last time I took a bit of a sabbatical from inter-county football was between 06 and 09, and I got involved with Kevin O'Reilly's in 08, and they gave me a great love and passion back for the game again. And it's just tremendous to be involved. You know, it keeps us motivated and keeps us energised. You know,
is that important that you actually do get the chance to re-energise with the grassroots and with underage teams? Because sometimes, especially the way inter-county and the pressures and the scrutiny that you're under as an inter-county manager, you can forget why you fell in love with the game in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because in inter-county football, you're in a kind of a bubble, and sometimes you don't see what's going on around you. And when you get back involved with a club, you see how much it means to people. And you know, if you were in Newbridge last night and up at the club there in Moorefield, up at the clubhouse, you'd have seen the passion and how much it meant to people. And maybe sometimes, you know, at inter-county level, we forget that. We're living in a kind of a bubble and a bit divorced from maybe the grassroots and a bit divorced from reality. So, you know, club football really is where it's at. It's where the real passion is, and you know, I have to say that it's opened my ears to a bit of reality, you know.
Good stuff, Jack. Enjoy the rest of the Christmas and the rest of the campaign. Thanks very much for joining us.
Come on, thank you.
Jack O'Connor there giving us some thoughts on the Moorefield win yesterday. You know, it is great that because it's such a random story. It's like Jack O'Connor, Kerry legend, his kids move to Newbridge, end up playing for Moorefield, and lo and behold, they're in an All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, I like the way he credits the Sons for like his self-interest. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. That is the self-interest there. He just is getting so much out of it. You can see the happiness. Of course, having your sons involved makes it so much more special. But he just loves, I'd say, the idea of this whole new project, this whole new group of players to kind of get the best out of. And you can be sure he's a vital role in all of that, despite being just a selector. But like, any team with Jack O'Connor on the sidelines, you do not write off. And I know you're actually tipping them against Currafin, which I'm actually surprised to hear. I would expect the bookies have Currafin, if they beat Fulham Irish, that is, as warm favourites for that one. But I suppose that's just to a pedigree, in my opinion, to be honest.
The other thing with Jack O'Connor in Newbridge as well is he'll be appreciated there. It came across quite strongly in his book, which was an excellent book, that while he was happy with everything he did as Kerry manager in both these spells, maybe there was a lack of appreciation from certain quarters.
The former players.
Well, some former, and yeah.
The ones with the All-Stars are the All-Stars and the All-Irelands rattling around in their chains.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas if you go to Newbridge and do what he's done, you are appreciated for it. And there is that old cliche that you are more a prophet not being appreciated in their own land, whereas they are away. And it seems to be the case. And, he is first and foremost a football coach, but you wouldn't blame the guy for liking being liked. That's there's nothing wrong with that.
Do you think that when you hear somebody like Jack say, our football culture is this and your football culture is that, we should listen to what he says and change our football culture into something different? Maybe lash the ball into the full forward line a little bit earlier, lads.
Yeah.
You're like, shut up, don't be stealing any Kerry ideas.
Absolutely not. Don't bother. There's no success rate in that whatsoever. It's very interesting as well how aware he is of the different styles, and how, like, we can say that that's very stereotypical to refer to a club team as the style of their county team. But Jack seems to agree with that wholeheartedly, that there is a style within the county, and the one that Kildare employs is very different to the one that Kerry employs.
Yeah, not very successful in Kildare's history. So congratulations to everybody at Moorefield. It's a phenomenal achievement for them. Corofin 6-4, Schlockneil 7-4, Nemo 11-4, and Moorefield 9-1 at this stage.
Wow.
To win the All-Ireland.
Maybe I'm kind of drunk on the spirit of them still. I mean, if you were actually at the game, you could
think about this before you go any further here.
Exactly,
This is on the internet. They'll clip it and go, oh, Moorefield.
Having been there, I think it's just when you're at an event like that, whether you have an involvement or you don't have an involvement, like when the full-time whistle went, it was like actually being back in Mallow when I watched my own club win a Munster title. You were that sucked into it. So maybe ask me in a week when I've actually seen a bit of Moorefield, or seen a bit of Corofin, have seen a bit more of Nemo and Schlockneil, my answer would be different. But I just think with the talent they have and the way they finish games and how they can finish games with precision and skill, that's a big thing.
You've got the sporting equivalent of Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
This being Christmas season, I was going to call it Helsinki Syndrome and go Helsinki, Sweden, and see if anybody got the joke.
I got it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He's like,
the way you did it was much better in the end.
There you go. It turns out. Right, lads, thanks very much for being with us today. Monday Night Rugby on the radio tonight, on News Talk, and loads more besides. Make sure you stay tuned. If, as ever, you want to get in touch with us, you can tweet us here at Off The Ball. If anybody does want to donate, Oisin, is there any way?
If you go to the link at Gaelic Voices for Change, or you can go to my Twitter, I'll put up the link now at Oisin Langan. And you'll find it there.
Nice one. All right, and well done to everybody involved in that. We'll see you tomorrow bright and early at 7:45. Good luck.
Well, here on the streets of Dublin with Dublin senior hurling manager and former Dublin football manager Pat Gilroy. Pat, you have brought yourself and indeed the whole squad out for the Gaelic Voices for Change stand against homelessness and support of homeless people. Talk to me about your reasons for doing that.
I think, you look at this and you look at the way our society is and the way the economy has gone over the last number of years. Like, it's just not acceptable for us to accept homelessness and the way it's growing. I mean, if it was shrinking, you'd say, right, that's grand, but it's not. It's just not good enough. And I think, as a society, we need to, I suppose, support those people who are vulnerable and who can't support themselves, and do whatever little bit anybody can do to try and raise the awareness around it and people who can help, that they will then go and do something about this, because I think, you know, you have 1 million people here and probably most people are doing okay at the moment, and if everybody does just a little bit, it'll make the difference.
Father, obviously you wouldn't be here if you didn't support this initiative. Tell me how important it is.
I think it's hugely important. Homelessness is a political problem and it has to be solved politically. And here you have a national organisation with enormous credibility, with its tentacles in every community in the country, who are sleeping out, are raising awareness both among themselves, first of all, but also among the communities in which they're inserted about this problem of homelessness. We will never solve the problem of homelessness unless there's a groundswell from below of people demanding that more action is taken and more effective action is taken, and the GAA are in a very powerful position to spread that message.
For me, I had a personal incident that really it brought it home to me, and home is the operative word, because I was in Dublin and early morning going to work, going to a meeting, and this man shouted, "Command Brady up Mayo," from across the street in Westmoreland Street, and I stopped. The man was homeless, but as what I've said, he wasn't soulless, so I walked over to him and I shook his hand, and it turned out to be the man from my own town in Ballinland, Mayo. You know, and I think even me, and I was naive to think that, you know, homelessness is something that's in the big cities. Someone from Mayo or Sligo or Leitrim or Galway is not homeless, but I met a man and we went for a coffee, and the one common denominator we didn't talk about how hard it was for him or why he ended up homeless. We talked about GAA, and when I seen the opportunity to join the Gaelic Voices for Change group, I said, you know what, that's my way of saying, you know what, I can try a little, I can do a little.
Well, it's just after 5 o'clock in the morning. We're still at the GPO for the Gaelic Voices for Change Sleepout. Eamon Fennell, who helped organise, well, the whole thing, but especially what was done in Dublin, is with me. Eamon, you've been awake all night. As we can see, there's still people trying to sleep, or maybe even actually getting some sleep in the background. Eamon, what do you feel you've achieved by doing this evening?
I think we've achieved a great deal of awareness towards the situation that it is already there, but also for the Gaelic Voices for Change brand, about trying to get all these people and the other people around the other counties more involved in Gaelic Voice for Change. The big part of this was we had to learn a bit more about it, and to learn a bit more about it we had to sleep on the streets. So hopefully now whoever's sleeping here and it's handed all over the country will get more involved and will help us make a change.
Sinead Finnegan, All-Ireland winner with Dublin. You took part in the sleepout. It's now 6 o'clock in the morning. Everyone's packing up and heading away. What do you think was achieved?
I think a lot of people came together with a goal of, you know, 1, creating awareness, 2, creating funds, but 3, experiencing what it was like to experience what these people who aren't as lucky as ourselves do every day of the week. So it was a cold night, there was a bit of rain, and we all slept out. Well, some people slept, some people didn't, some people were chatting all night, but I think it was a great sign of community coming together and achieving something together as a team, as you do in sport.
Having stayed outside for the night, one night we did it, can't imagine having to do it for many nights in a row or indefinitely. Very, very difficult conditions to try and, you know, function and, you know, maintain a life when you don't have anywhere safe to go, somewhere that's warm and that you can return to every night after being out and about. So yeah, it was a very worthwhile experience. I hope that it has raised awareness, if nothing else, and that we can move forward from here, that this is the starting point rather than a one-off event.